And now, please, Lee, it's up to you.
Thank you, Vincent. It's great to be here, and hi, everyone. So our platform takes data and provides simple visualization to try and make sense of it. And over some of the following slides, I'll discuss some of the trends that we're seeing as COVID-19's wrought havoc on the aviation sector and how we might use it to plan for terminal operations in the short term. Obviously, data forms a key pillar to this, and we know that prediction is very difficult in an environment where the rules are constantly changing, which Anna touched on, and that there's limited historic precedent, and we primarily only have March to go back on. Next slide, please, Vincent. So a little context, a few weeks back, UCHU updated the Reboot Aviation page, www.rebootAviation.com, and we updated it with a new graphical interface with additional data sources. And if you haven't seen it already, the next slide is a really short video just showing the page. So it will zoom in on wherever you connect to in the world. So I'm based in the UK, and you can look at airports. So that was just showing Heathrow. It showed arrival and departure flights. You can look at the routes, and you can show the impact of that route based on pre and post and current COVID. You can look at flight conditions. You can look at COVID for the airport. You can look at it from a global country perspective. And you can pan and zoom, and you can apply filters for just airports or countries. As you go through this, recommend having a little look if you haven't already. So next slide, please. So I think these two slides illustrate the scale of the problem, and that whilst this is focused on the UK, it's global, it affects everyone. We're seeing airlines consolidating to main stations. We've seen British Airways and Virgin consolidating at Heathrow recently. And we've seen some airlines suspending operations for a period of time, which has some disproportionate impact on some of the airlines and the airports here. But you can see the scale of the challenge that we have. Next slide, please. So I've picked a couple of airports here, Heathrow and Munich. And the COVID data for Germany and for the UK. So if you look at Heathrow and you look at Munich, the start of the year started off relatively the same, and then we saw the massive drop during March. The grey line on both of them shows stringency. So stringency is a mix of indicators which determine how much the government constraints that have been applied, financial support, etc., and that's applied across every country. So what you can see here is that the flights have massively dropped off, and they're beginning to creep back through July and August. Now September looks a bit lower because it's a part month, we're only halfway through. But also September is typically a quieter month anyway. What we're seeing though from previous slide, what we're seeing from a COVID perspective is that whilst the numbers are beginning to rise, we're very fortunate not to be seeing mortality levels rise, which is really good. If we look at some airlines, so we've got a couple of flag carriers here, and we've got a couple of low costs. You can see the low costs in these two examples anyway, really pared back operations, in some cases suspended, whereas the flag carriers did continue. But what you can see here is while stringency is increasing both in the UK and in Germany, we've seen flights increase, which is broadly positive. Next slide. And I've got a couple of slides here just showing country. In both cases, we've got two continents here, UK and US, or Europe and US, and you can see the patterns are largely similar. There's more domestic flights that have held up in the US. But what you do see in the US is that the COVID spike is much later than in Europe, but we're still seeing flight increasing exactly the same as you are in Europe. And the next slide, please. And again here, Germany is very similar to other European countries, but if we picked on Spain as an example, we can see September there's quite a large spike, but at the moment we're not seeing mortality rate increase. So whilst this is a really complicated and moving picture, and we're seeing some real ad hoc sort of unilateral government actions applied really swiftly, something again Anna spoke about, and we're seeing travel restrictions and quarantine change, you know, that will obviously impact confidence for travellers. However, the traffic levels do seem to be returning. Now, if this trend continues, where we see a lower mortality level than we were seeing earlier in this year, and I guess there's lots of different reasons why we might be better prepared now than we were back in March, then it's quite likely that the governments will see that as an opportunity to start to soften some of the constraints because of the economic impact it's having on the global economy, and we'll see confidence return. And we may see travellers returning as we approach Christmas of maybe 30 to 40% below last year, which is a hugely positive step if we look at where we are now. We have data on other regions and countries and airports. If there's anything you want, then please let me know. Contacts are on the last slide. And that's me. Thank you very much for listening.